So we've spoken about outliers. I need your eyes this way. Conversation's over. We've spoken about outliers before, but we've just spoken about them like as a whole. We've just said they're like really big numbers or really small numbers, okay? But one person's impression of what a big number is might be very different to someone else's. So you might have a set of numbers which is like 2, 3, and 4, and then there might be a 10. One person might go, that 10's an outlier, and another person might say, that's not an outlier. Okay, so we need instead, and that so it doesn't work. We need to have a definition of an outlier. Now, there's a few different ways we can find outliers. However, in the syllabus, this is the way which doesn't want us to learn about outliers. Okay, and so this is a definition of how to find an outlier. Now, a quick point, and this is where it says, if asked to make statistical calculations of data, disregarding the outlier, always acknowledge or mention that you have taken an outlier out. So if you do have an outlier, sometimes we'll ask you to find the mean mode median without the outlier, okay? Don't do that unless you are asked to, okay? So don't just go, oh, that's an outlier, I'm not going to include it. So anytime we ask you to find statistics, even if you think there's an outlier, you just use all the data. What will usually happen is in one of the questions we'll get you to do the statistics, and then we go, there appears to be an outlier in this. Can you prove whether it is or it isn't? Use this process we're about to learn. And then it will say, find the same statistics without the outlier. Compare. And so at that point, you will find them without the outlier, but that's the only time. If you do in any way disregard an outlier, you always write in brackets outlier of 76 disregarded or something. You just make it really clear what you've done. The reason for that is if you take out an outlier, find all the calculations, I'm marking it, I'm looking for certain numbers, I've got no idea what you've done, you're just going to get every question wrong. Well, if you tell me I've taken out this outlier, even if you've done that wrong, I can then do the calculations, check if you're right, and you just lose 1 mark at the top and get followed through for the rest of it. Okay, so make it really clear what you're doing. All right, so the criteria we use to find an outlier is more than 1.5 times the interquartile range beyond the upper and lower quartiles, which sounds a little bit confusing. And so our question is 31% an outlier? So if I got given this set of data, we're saying, is this number, the minimum number, 31, is it an outlier or is it not an outlier? Okay, to do that, all right, up here, wherever it is, there's dinging.
It's a computer.
The computer. Turn off.
Let's reopen.
Who's dinging? What's dinging? Okay. Just don't let it happen again. I'm giving you time right now to turn any phone off, to do whatever it is. Yeah? Okay. So if we look at this, we're saying we find the interquartile range. We find 1.5 times that interquartile range. And we have to go, okay, is it past Q1 and past Q3? Is the outlier past that number? So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we're looking at this set of data, what's the interquartile range? 60 to 76. So how many numbers are between 60 and 76? 16. So our interquartile range is 16. So 1.5 times that is 24. Okay. So step 1, find interquartile range. Can I get you to listen, not write? Just listen, not write. I'll give you time to write, so I'll freeze it again in a second. Okay. Multiply by 1.5, so we've got 24. So what we're actually saying here is 24 above 76. Any score up to and including that number is not an outlier. So 76 plus 24 is 100. So any score under 100 is not an outlier. So therefore I could say 91 is not an outlier. It's part of the scores, okay? And then anything from Q1 downwards of 24, so 60 take 24 is 36. So any score under 36 is an outlier. So is 31 an outlier? Yes. All right, so we find that 1.5 times the interquartile range, we add it to Q3, we take it from Q1, and anything outside that range is an outlier. And so that's where we get to in terms of here. Ignore those questions. So we're saying anything from 36% to 100% is not an outlier. Anything below 36% and anything above 100% is an outlier. that make sense? Okay, could you please write those notes down?